such a common human situation. Probably happens every day, if not, a couple times a week, whether at home or at work, where someone is approaching you with intense emotions. And you can feel the stakes there, that it could make or break a work relationship, relationship in your family, in your community. Those are important, pivotal moments. So I'm glad that you asked about the emotional rescue method in that context, because it's actually a really live issue for me. I think because growing up, I didn't really know how to work constructively with conflict or tension. I didn't really learn that. And again, it's not because my folks didn't want to teach me that. It's that they also weren't given those tools to know what to do in that situation. So I know something about myself that's there, that I have kind of, one of my responses to that is to be a little bit of a turtle sometimes, right? Sometimes you can be a turtle and kind of want to go back into your shell. Other people are more lions, wanting to, kind of come at the other person with the equal amount of energy. And the metaphor that I've been contemplating comes from martial arts. I haven't studied Aikido or Capoeira or Jiu-Jitsu, but back in the day, I did study Kung Fu, Tai Chi, when I was in my early 20s, which is now back in the day. But in those martial arts, there's this principle that when someone is coming at you with strength or a weapon or what have you, that there's a way that we could receive their energy, not add anything on top of that energy, but kind of pivot or create a pathway for that energy to be redirected. If you ever watched any demonstrations of true martial arts masters, sometimes you'll see these demonstrations where, 10 people are coming at one person, and in a blink of an eye, somehow imperceptibly, without even noticing that it seems like they've exerted themselves even all that much, or waved their arms around, or did any fancy moves, that these great martial arts masters can find a way to receive and redirect the energy in a way that actually disarms, literally and figuratively, the conflict. And for the greatest of masters, not only are they disarming the conflicts, literally and figuratively, but they do it in a way that no further harm is caused between the people involved, or even the attacker, so to speak, or the person coming at you with all of this energy. An attitude of, I don't want them to cause any further harm. So that's, that's very high level, advanced level. But I use that metaphor to show the possibilities that are there that we don't usually know are there. And the idea of receiving and redirecting the energy is a really interesting one to contemplate, because when we hear the word receive, what do we think that means? Do we think that that means that we have to absorb the other person's energy or take it into us? Again, I'm not a martial arts master, far from it, but I think there's some interesting exploration there. When I apply it to the emotional rescue method, when someone is coming at me with a lot of energy, first and foremost, step one, practice mindful gap, feel, hold, look. So instead of projecting my energy forward towards the person, I try to very subtly, even, it doesn't even have to, they might not even know I'm doing it, but subtly kind of turn my awareness inward towards the feel, hold, look, to see what is this situation bringing up in me. What energy is showing up or rippling through my body, what thoughts or stories are coming. And by doing that, there is a receptivity, but it's not a receptivity that's about absorbing the toxicity of the other person necessarily, or at all, really. It's about a receptivity that comes from presence, from being grounded in one's own presence. Again, maybe it was some martial arts movie that I saw when I was a kid, I'm not sure, but this idea that when there's no target, there's no place for the weapon to land, so to speak. And what I mean by that is that if you're really grounded in yourself, then there's not as much damage that can be done by someone else's projection of emotional energy onto you. So the receptivity that's there, as I mentioned in the martial arts metaphor, the receptivity and ability to redirect the person's energy, that comes from the practice of mindful gap, of really staying in one's own body and mind when this sort of situation is happening, attending to one's own emotion, and having that open up the possibility for a fresh look at the situation and examining or identifying a lot of other ways that we can respond that don't come from one's own habit or projection. Another thing that mindful gap enables us to do, actually, and this is how step one, mindful gap, leads to step two, clear seeing, is that it also creates more space for us to actually tune in more clearly to what's happening for the other person, and tune in more clearly to them, not in a narrow way, but in a more panoramic way. It's being able to see the broader landscape of all of the different factors that might be causing the person to be acting or responding in this way. So that kind of martial arts move of receptivity, clearly seeing what's happening in the entire situation in a 360-degree view. Sometimes you see that in martial arts movies, right? Like even in The Matrix, where the person is able all of a sudden in the moment to have this kind of broader 360-degree view of what's happening. And that allows us to redirect. So receptivity comes from ourselves, and understanding ourselves and being grounded in ourselves, and also being able to tune into where the other person is coming from, actually. Another thing that I have found helpful in situations like that is something that I sometimes refer to as speaking to the better angels of our nature. And of course, that comes from one of my history geek heroes, Abraham Lincoln. I think it was second inaugural address, where he talks about the better angels of our nature. And what's helpful to me in that situation, whether you're, for example, giving someone feedback in a one-on-one supervisory meeting, or in an interpersonal conflict of some kind, is when we can, through the practice of clear seeing, connect to what is this person's most noble aspirations. We are all equal as human beings in wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer. And each of us has our own unique way of defining that. But if we're able to tune into that, and how we're be able to tune into that is mindful gap clear seeing, then we begin to be able to speak to that part of the other person. I find personally that if I have not regulated my own emotions or found my own emotional resilience, I'm not even thinking about talking to the other person's better angels. All I'm in is my own projection about what's happening, who this person is, how it's going to affect me, etc. So there's no possibility to talk to that part of that other person because I'm completely clouded by my own emotional energy. But there is a possibility through the practice of the emotional rescue method that that very energy of the emotions that I might be feeling can actually cleanse or wipe off the lens of my perception, so to speak. Was that Aldous Huxley, right? Cleaning the doors of perception, so to speak. But I've experienced that as true, and others who have been practicing this method for a long time have also experienced that it can cleanse our lens of how we see things so we can see it more clearly. So I just love the inspiration of those great martial artists who you can't even almost perceive that they're doing anything. They're not taking a break and leaving the room and, doing whatever they do and come back. It's just in the moment where they're able to do that. And before you know it, all of the attackers or the people who are coming at them are at four corners of the room, lying on their backs, looking up, saying, with stars above their heads, wondering what the heck just happened. But in the best of situations, these great masters are also, through their clear seeing, able to redirect it in a way that's with the best outcome for the most amount of people. And we can't do that when our perception of the situation is narrowed by our intense emotions.